My father told his friends I inspected sewer lines for a living. He had no idea my signature authorized the safety protocols for every major bridge on the East Coast. When I invited my family to watch me receive a medal from the President of the United States, they said they were too busy. They had to attend my sister's lipstick launch party. That night, while they stood in a crowded nightclub surrounded by strangers, my face lit up every news channel in the world. They thought I was nobody. They were wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I became the woman who cut her family out of her life on live television, you need to understand who I was before. The invisible daughter who kept the world from falling apart while everyone else took credit for standing upright. The rain hit my office window at 3 in the morning with the insistence of a problem that wouldn't solve itself. Most of Seattle was asleep, wrapped in the wet darkness that defined October in the Pacific Northwest. I was wide awake, staring at 3 monitors that showed me the skeleton of a city most people never thought about. My name is Rebecca Walsh. I'm 32 years old and I see things that aren't supposed to be visible. On my center screen, a spectrogram danced in jagged red lines, the vibrational signature of the Marcus Whitman Bridge, a 2-mile suspension span that connected downtown Seattle to the industrial port. 50,000 cars crossed it every day. 50,000 people who trusted that the concrete beneath their tires and the cables above their heads would hold. They didn't know that at 2:47 a.m., sensor array Delta 7 had picked up an anomaly, a deviation of 0.004% in the harmonic frequency of the secondary support cable. To most engineers, that number would be noise, statistical variance, nothing. To me, it was a scream. I zoomed in on the data, my fingers flying across the mechanical keyboard that I preferred because the tactile feedback helped me think. The anomaly wasn't random. It had a pattern, a rhythmic stress cycle that suggested metal fatigue in the cable anchor point. Not critical yet, not dangerous today, but in 6 months, maybe 8, that microscopic weakness would propagate. The cable would snap during a windstorm and the bridge would twist like a ribbon until the deck collapsed into Puget Sound. I pulled up the maintenance schedule. The bridge wasn't due for inspection until next spring. Not good enough. I picked up my secure phone, the red one that bypassed every bureaucratic layer between me and action, and dialed the emergency infrastructure hotline. Seattle Municipal Response. Code? Walsh Rebecca, authorization Aegis 77 Alpha. I need an immediate deployment to Marcus Whitman Bridge, sensor Delta 7. Cable anchor inspection priority 2. Confirmed. Crew dispatched. ETA 40 minutes. I hung up and made a note in my log. October 1st, 03:15, preventive deployment, MW Bridge. Estimated catastrophic failure prevented. March 2024. Estimated lives saved, 2,300. No one would ever know. That was the job. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. The cold blue light from the monitors was the only illumination in my apartment. I lived in a modest 1-bedroom in Capitol Hill, the kind of place with thin walls and a view of a parking lot. I could afford better. My salary at the National Infrastructure Bureau was substantial, but I'd never felt the need to upgrade. What was the point? I was barely here. When I wasn't at the NIB Operations Center, I was here in this home office, watching the country's vital organs like a surgeon monitoring a patient who didn't know they were in the ICU. My phone buzzed. The personal one, a text from my mother, Patricia. Rebecca, are you awake? Amber needs you to pick up her dry cleaning tomorrow. The place on 5th Avenue. Make sure they didn't shrink the silk blouse. It's for the photo shoot. I stared at the message. I'd just potentially saved 2,300 people, and my mother wanted me to fetch laundry. I typed back. I have work. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, it's Sunday. You can make time. Family helps family. I didn't respond. I set the phone face down on my desk and turned back to my monitors. The bridge crew had arrived. I watched their headlamps bob in the darkness through the remote camera feed, tiny points of light against the massive concrete and steel structure. They'd find the stress fracture. They'd reinforce it. By morning, the bridge would be safe, and no one would ever know how close they'd come. This was my world. Precise, solvable, fair. Unlike the one I'd have to face in 6 hours. Sunday, 11 a.m., the performance. The Walsh family home sat in Bellevue, one of those manufactured suburbs where every house looked like it had been designed by the same committee and approved by the same homeowners association. Cream-colored siding, black shutters, a lawn so aggressively green it looked artificial. I pulled my Honda Civic into the driveway behind my father's Lexus, the one he'd bought used but told everyone was new, and sat for a moment with the engine running. Sunday dinner wasn't a request. It was a mandate issued by my mother every week with the force of a court summons. Missing it required a death in the family, and even then, you'd better have a good excuse for whose death it was. I cut the engine and walked to the front door. Before I could knock, it swung open. My sister Amber stood in the doorway, phone in hand, ring light clipped to her designer purse. "Finally," she said, not looking up from her screen. "You're late, Mom's freaking out." Amber was 28, but carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd been told she was special every day of her life. She was objectively beautiful, long blonde hair, blue eyes, the kind of symmetrical features that photographed well. But beauty was the only currency she'd ever been taught to value. She was wearing athleisure that cost more than my monthly car payment, the kind of outfit that was supposed to look casual but required 3 hours and a professional stylist to achieve. "Traffic on I-5, I said. "Yeah, well, try Waze next time. I posted about it on my story. There's always a backup near the exit." She stepped aside to let me in, then immediately went back to her phone, typing frantically. "Ugh, this reel is only at 300 likes. The algorithm is killing me." I walked past her into the living room. My father, Daniel Walsh, was in his leather recliner, the one no one else was allowed to sit in, scrolling through his tablet. He was 60, with the kind of weathered face that came from decades of stress poorly managed. He'd been a sales manager at a car dealership until he'd taken early retirement 3 years ago. Now he managed Amber's career, which mostly meant driving her to photo shoots and arguing with her about engagement metrics. "Rebecca," he said without looking up, "you're late." "It's 11:02, Dad. Dinner's at 11. "Punctuality means arriving early." He finally glanced at me, his expression flat. "You look tired. Are you eating enough? You should take vitamins." It was the most personal concern he'd shown me in months. My mother emerged from the kitchen carrying a platter of appetizers arranged with the precision of a museum exhibit. Patricia Walsh was 58 and fighting every year with the fury of someone who'd built her identity on youth. She'd been a beauty queen in college, second runner-up in Miss Washington 1986, and she'd never quite recovered from the fact that the crown had gone to someone else. "Oh, good, you're here," she said, setting the platter down. "Amber, honey, come get a picture with these before people start eating. The lighting is perfect right now." Amber materialized instantly, positioning herself next to the appetizers with the practiced ease of someone who'd turned every meal into content. "Mom, hold the reflector. Dad, get the ring light. Becca, can you move? You're in the shot." I stepped back into the hallway. For the next 10 minutes, I watched my family orchestrate a photo shoot for stuffed mushrooms. Amber adjusted her hair. My mother fussed with the garnish. My father held a portable light like he was filming a documentary. No one asked me about my week. Finally, the shoot wrapped. Amber disappeared to edit her photos. My parents settled into the living room. I took my usual seat at the dining table, the chair farthest from the head, tucked into the corner like an afterthought. Silence filled the room. Not the comfortable silence of people who enjoyed each other's company, but the heavy, expectant silence of people waiting for someone else to fill the void. 20 minutes later, the front door burst open. Amber had returned from the bathroom where she'd apparently changed into a different outfit, a flowing dress that shimmered when she moved. Sorry," she announced, though she didn't sound sorry. "The lighting in the bathroom was amazing, and I just had to get some shots for the grid. You know how it is." My mother rushed to her side. "Oh, sweetheart, that dress is stunning. Is this the one from the PR package?" "Yes, Stylebox sent it yesterday. They want me to do a collaboration for their fall line." Amber twirled, making the dress flare. "They're talking about maybe flying me to New York for Fashion Week. Can you imagine?" "That's wonderful, Princess," my father said, standing up to pour her a glass of wine. "You're really building something special." We sat down to eat. The conversation was a monologue delivered by Amber, punctuated by gasps of admiration from our parents. She talked about her engagement metrics. She talked about a mean comment someone had left and how she'd bravely blocked them. She talked about a brunch invitation she'd received from another influencer with 20,000 followers. I cut my pot roast into small, precise pieces and said nothing. "The algorithm has been so weird lately," Amber said, stabbing a piece of asparagus. "I'm doing everything right, posting at peak times, using the right hashtags, but I can barely break 10,000 likes on my unboxing videos." "Have you tried adding more personality?" my father asked, as if he had any idea what he was talking about. "Maybe smile more. People like happy content." "Daddy, I smile in every video." "Maybe smile bigger." I cleared my throat. 3 sets of eyes flickered toward me, then immediately glazed over with disinterest. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice level, "I have some news too." My mother paused mid-chew. "Oh?" "I was promoted this week. I'm now the lead structural analyst for the entire Pacific Northwest Division of the National Infrastructure Bureau." Silence. "That's nice, dear," my mother said finally, her attention already drifting back to Amber's phone. "Does that mean you'll be working even later hours? You really should try to get out more. Meet someone." "It's a federal appointment, Mom. It comes with a GS-15 classification and a presidential security clearance upgrade." My father waved his hand dismissively. "Government jobs are all the same. Stable, sure, but boring. Not like what Amber's building. She's creating a brand. That's the future." Amber suddenly slammed her hand on the table. We all jumped. "What's wrong?" my mother asked, panicked. "The Wi-Fi is down again," Amber said, shaking her phone. "I can't upload my story. I promised my followers a Sunday dinner update by 7. My mother turned to me immediately. "Rebecca, fix it." "I'm eating dinner, Mom." "It'll only take a second." Her voice sharpened. "You know how upset your sister gets when she can't post. You're the computer person. Just go reset the thing." I looked at my plate. The pot roast was getting cold. I looked at Amber, who was on the verge of a tantrum. I looked at my father, who was nodding in agreement with my mother. I stood up. I walked to the living room, knelt behind the dusty entertainment center, and rebooted the router. The blinking orange lights turned green. The Wi-Fi reconnected. I stared at those green lights and felt something inside me go very quiet. When I returned to the table, Amber was already typing away, crisis averted. "It's working," I said. "Took you long enough," Amber muttered without looking up. "Thank you, Rebecca," my father said, though his tone suggested I'd merely performed a basic function, like a toaster making toast. The doorbell rang. My mother brightened. "Oh, that must be the Johnsons. I told them to stop by for drinks." The Johnsons were neighbors. Frank and Carol, a retired couple who treated neighborhood gossip like an Olympic sport. My father ushered them in, practically shoving his phone in Frank's face. "You have to see Amber's new campaign. She's going to be in Seattle Lifestyle magazine next month. They're doing a feature on local influencers to watch." "That's impressive," Frank said politely. He turned to me. "And how are you doing, Rebecca? Still working for the city?" I opened my mouth to correct him. "Oh, Rebecca's still doing her computer thing," my father interrupted, waving his hand. "She works for the government. Paperwork, permits, you know. Managing infrastructure records or something. Stable, but you know." He laughed. "Not exactly exciting. Not like what Amber's doing." The room chuckled. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not embarrassment, just ice. "Actually," I said, my voice quiet but sharp, "I specialize in structural risk analysis for critical infrastructure. Bridges, dams, high-rises. I'm one of 15 people in the country with Aegis-level clearance." Right, my father said, patting my shoulder with a heavy hand. "She makes sure the cracks in the sidewalk don't get too big. Important work. Someone's got to do it." More laughter. I excused myself to the bathroom. I locked the door, turned on the fan, and stared at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back at me was 32 years old and looked 40. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a functional ponytail, no makeup, clothes that were neat but forgettable. I was invisible. I'd made myself invisible because that was the only way to survive in this family. If I shone, I made Amber look dim. If I succeeded, I made my parents feel inadequate. So I'd learned to dim my own light, to fold myself into smaller and smaller spaces, to exist without taking up room. I'd spent my entire life being structural support, the hidden beams that held up the house while everyone admired the wallpaper. I washed my hands and went back out. The evening dragged on. Eventually, I said I had an early start tomorrow and needed to leave. "Already?" my mother asked, though she looked relieved. "Don't forget to pick up your father's prescription on Tuesday," she added. "The pharmacy closes at 6. "I'll put it on my calendar," I said. I walked out into the rain without an umbrella. The cold water felt good on my face. It felt real. Inside that house, everything was fake. The smiles, the praise, the love. Out here in the dark, with the hum of the city in the distance, I knew exactly where I stood. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. I didn't look back at the warm, glowing windows of the Walsh family home. I had bridges to monitor. Monday, 8 a.m., NIB headquarters. The National Infrastructure Bureau headquarters was not designed for comfort. It was designed for function. Located in a fortified compound 10 miles outside Seattle, the building looked like a massive concrete box that someone had dropped in the middle of a forest clearing. There were no decorative landscaping, no welcoming lobby, no corporate art installations. There were blast walls, retina scanners, and armed federal agents who took their jobs very seriously. I swiped my badge at the main entrance. The heavy steel doors hissed open, sealing the outside world behind me. The moment I crossed that threshold, something in my posture changed. My spine straightened, my stride lengthened. The invisible daughter evaporated, replaced by senior analyst Rebecca Walsh, one of the most respected structural engineers in the federal government. The operations center, we called it the Hive, was a cathedral of technology. Rows of curved monitors displayed real-time data from sensors embedded in critical infrastructure across the country. The air smelled of ozone and filtered oxygen. The walls were lined with screens showing bridges, dams, tunnels, power plants, the circulatory system of a nation. "Morning, Walsh." I turned to see Kevin O'Brien approaching with 2 cups of coffee. Kevin was a hydrologist who specialized in dam safety, and he was one of the few people in the building who treated me like a human being rather than a data processor. "Morning," I said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "Please tell me it's the good stuff and not the break room sludge." "I drove to that place you like, the one with the oat milk." He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "Figured you could use it after pulling an all-nighter on the Whitman Bridge thing." I'd filed my report on the bridge deployment at 6 a.m. Kevin had read it by 8. That was the kind of colleague he was, attentive, thorough, and somehow always aware of what everyone else was working on. "You're a lifesaver," I said. "That's your job. I just bring coffee." We walked together toward my office, a glass-walled enclosure that overlooked the main floor. Through the window, I could see Jennifer Mitchell at her station, headphones on, completely absorbed in analyzing seismic data from the Cascadia subduction zone. Jen was a single mother of 2 who'd worked her way up from administrative assistant to senior geologist through sheer determination. She was proof that competence mattered more than pedigree. I was halfway through my coffee when my desk phone rang, the internal line, the one that only rang when someone important wanted something. "Walsh. Rebecca. My office. Now." Director Harrison Blake's voice was calm but firm. I set down my coffee and headed upstairs. Harrison Blake's office was sparse, a desk, 2 chairs, and a wall of commendations that he never looked at. Harrison was 55, with iron gray hair and a face carved by decades of impossible decisions. He'd been an Army Corps of Engineers colonel before taking over the NIB, and he ran the bureau like a military operation. Hierarchical, efficient, and unforgiving of incompetence. But he'd also been the only person in my life who'd ever really seen me. "Sit," he said. I sat. He slid a folder across the desk. On the cover, printed in red, "Classified, eyes only, Aegis protocol activation." My hands trembled slightly as I opened it. Project Aegis had been my life's work for the past 5 years. It was an integrated AI system that combined data from 50,000 sensors nationwide, seismic monitors, stress gauges, weather patterns, traffic flow, to predict catastrophic infrastructure failures before they happened. Not hours before, days before. Before Aegis, we were reactive. We fixed bridges after they cracked. We evacuated towns after levees failed. Aegis changed the timeline. "It's live," Harrison said, watching my face. "The president signed the executive order an hour ago. The system is yours. Full operational authority." I couldn't speak. "The Black Ridge Dam situation last month sealed it," he continued. "You predicted that failure 48 hours in advance. You saved 12,000 lives, Rebecca. The White House took notice." I remembered that night, the pore pressure readings, the certainty in my gut that the dam would fail. The site manager who'd called me a hysterical woman until the embankment collapsed exactly when I said it would. "There's something else," Harrison said. He pulled out a second folder. This one was cream-colored, heavy stock embossed with a gold seal. "You've been nominated for the Silver Star for Public Safety." I blinked. "The what?" "It's the highest civilian honor the Bureau awards. In 80 years, it's been given out 42 times, most of them posthumously." He paused. "You'd be the youngest living recipient, ever." My mouth had gone dry. "The ceremony is October 14th in Washington, D.C., Constitution Hall. The Vice President will be presenting. Full black tie gala, press coverage, the works." He slid a smaller envelope across the desk. "These are guest invitations. You're entitled to 3. I opened the envelope with shaking hands. 3 tickets, printed on heavy cardstock with silver lettering. Reserved seating, first-class airfare, a suite at the Willard Intercontinental Hotel. 3 tickets, 3 seats for family. "Congratulations, Rebecca," Harrison said quietly. "You've earned this, not just the medal, all of it. Recognition, respect, a goddamn parade if you want one." I looked up at him, and for a moment, I saw something in his face that looked almost like paternal pride. "Thank you, sir," I managed. "You're dismissed. Take the rest of the day. Process this. Then get back here tomorrow ready to run the most sophisticated infrastructure protection system in human history." I stood, clutching the folders. "Rebecca." I turned. "I have a daughter," Harrison said. His voice had gone soft, almost vulnerable. "Haven't spoken to her in 5 years. I let work consume everything, and when I finally looked up, she was gone. I'm telling you this because—" He trailed off. "Because you deserve people who celebrate you. Don't settle for less." Tuesday evening, the invitation, I drove to Bellevue on autopilot. The cream-colored envelope sat on my passenger seat like a bomb waiting to detonate. I'd rehearsed what I'd say a dozen times, but every version sounded desperate. "Mom, Dad, I want you to come to Washington with me. I'm receiving a national award and I'd like you to be there. The president will be there." None of it sounded right. None of it felt like enough. When I pulled into the driveway, I could already hear music thumping from inside. The bass was so loud it rattled the windows. I walked in without knocking. The living room looked like a bomb had gone off in a department store. Clothes everywhere, dresses, scarves, shoes in piles. My mother was on her knees pinning the hem of a silver cocktail dress while Amber stood on a chair, posing and turning. My father was adjusting a ring light, squinting at his phone to check the exposure. "Perfect!" Amber squealed when she saw me. "You're just in time. Guess what happened?" "I have no idea," I said, stepping over a pile of shoeboxes. "Glowbox Cosmetics is launching their new Stardust line, and guess who's hosting the launch party?" "I don't—" "Jules Vane, the actual Jules Vane, the pop star!" Amber was practically vibrating. "This is huge, Becca. Huge. If I can get a selfie with her, my follower count could triple. Triple!" My mother looked up, tears actually in her eyes. "We're so proud. She's worked so hard for this." "When is it?" I asked. "October 14th, downtown Seattle at the Sky Lounge. It's going to be incredible." October 14th, the same date as my ceremony. Of course it was. "That's great," I said. My voice sounded flat even to my own ears. "You should come," Amber said generously. I mean, you won't get into the VIP section, obviously, but you could stand by the red carpet and hold my coat while I do interviews. I looked at her standing on that chair in her expensive dress, her phone in one hand, her entire identity balanced on the validation of strangers. I looked at my parents arranging their lives around her latest performance. I pulled the cream envelope from my bag and set it on the coffee table, clearing a space among the makeup brushes and ring lights. Actually, I said, I came to talk to you about October 14th as well. The room went quiet, not with attention, but with the annoyed confusion of people whose show had been interrupted. I've been invited to Washington, D.C., I continued. I'm receiving the Silver Star for Public Safety. It's the highest honor the National Infrastructure Bureau awards. There will be a ceremony at Constitution Hall. The Vice President will be speaking. I swallowed. I want you to come with me. My mother squinted at the envelope without touching it, as if it might contaminate her. The Silver Star? Is that like a work thing? Like when your father got that plaque for 20 years at the dealership? No, Mom. It's a national award, presidential-level recognition. There will be senators, cabinet members. It's being broadcast live. My father picked up one of the tickets, turning it over carelessly. For that bridge thing you mentioned, the one with the flood? The dam. I prevented a catastrophic failure that would have killed 12,000 people. Right. He tossed the ticket back onto the table. It slid off and fluttered to the floor. Look, Rebecca, that's great. Really. We're proud of you. But you have to understand the timing here. He gestured to Amber, who had already lost interest and was scrolling through her phone. This Glowbox event is a one-time opportunity. Amber needs support. She needs me to film content because professional videographers are too expensive. She needs your mother to handle wardrobe changes. It's a team effort. And what about me? I asked. The question hung in the air, fragile and sharp. Do I not need support? My mother sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation that suggested I was being unreasonably difficult. Rebecca, don't be selfish. You know how sensitive your sister is. This is her big break, your thing. Well, it sounds very technical, very dry. It's not the kind of event that needs a whole family presence. It's not dry, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. The president might be there. It's at Constitution Hall, 2 blocks from the White House. But who's going to be there? Amber interrupted, looking up from her phone. Like, will there be anyone famous? Or just a bunch of old men in gray suits talking about concrete? It's not. My event has Jules Vane. It has press coverage. It's going to be on every entertainment blog in the country. Your thing is... She made a face. I mean, who's going to watch a bunch of engineers give speeches? I looked at my parents, waiting for them to correct her. Waiting for my father to say, That's enough, Amber. Your sister is achieving something incredible. Waiting for my mother to say, We can split up. Dad can go with Amber and I'll go with Rebecca. I waited, and I waited. She has a point, Rebecca, my mother said softly, offering me a pitying smile. We simply can't be in 2 places at once, and Amber's event, well, it's a bit more high profile, isn't it? She has sponsors to please. Your job is secure. Your government. They can't fire you just because your parents don't show up. We don't have time for stupid awards right now, Rebecca, my father said, checking his watch. We have to focus on the brand. This is about the family's future. I looked down at the invitation lying on the floor, the gold seal catching the harsh light of the ring light. So that's it? I asked. You're choosing a lipstick launch over your daughter's national recognition? Don't be dramatic, my mother scolded. We're not choosing a party. We're choosing to support your sister's career. Why can't you ever just be happy for her? Why does everything have to be a competition? It's not a competition, Mom. I just wanted... My voice cracked. I just wanted you to be there. Well, we can't, Amber said, popping the cork on a bottle of champagne she'd been chilling. Send us a picture of your medal. We'll like it on Facebook. That counts, right? She laughed. My parents laughed with her. I stood there, invisible again, watching the 3 of them return to their preparations as if I'd already left. I bent down and picked up the ticket from the floor. I brushed off the dust. Understood, I said. Great, my father said, already turning back to adjust his camera settings. Hey, while you're standing there, can you move that box of equipment to the car? It's heavy, and I don't want to strain my back before the big night. I looked at the box. Then I looked at my father. No, I said. He blinked, surprised. Excuse me? No, I repeated. I have to go. You're leaving? My mother asked, annoyed. But we haven't even had dinner. I'm not hungry. I walked out of the house. I didn't slam the door. I closed it quietly with the soft, final click of a lock engaging. The rain had started again. I walked to my car, the invitation clutched against my chest, and sat in the driver's seat for a long moment. I looked at the 3 tickets, reserved for immediate family. I realized then that the printer had made a mistake. I didn't have 3 immediate family members. I had none. I took out my phone. I scrolled to Mom and Dad in my contacts. I hit edit. I typed, Patricia, Daniel. I saved the changes. Then I deleted the favorite stars. I removed the emergency contact designations. I stripped away every designation that marked them as special. My hands weren't shaking. I felt a strange, hollow clarity, like the moment after you've cut away dead tissue and can finally see healthy flesh beneath. I started the car and drove away. I didn't look back at the house, at the warm windows glowing in the rain. They'd made their choice. They'd chosen Glowbox. They'd chosen noise and flash and temporary validation. And I'd chosen myself. For the first time in my life, I was fine with that. Wednesday, 9 p.m. The penthouse. I didn't go home to my apartment in Capitol Hill that night. Instead, I drove downtown to a building my family didn't know existed. The Meridian was a glass needle that pierced the Seattle skyline, 42 stories of steel and luxury. I'd closed on the penthouse 3 months ago using bonuses from the early phases of Project Aegis. It had cost me more than my parents had paid for their house, and I'd never told them about it. Why would I? To them, I was the daughter who lived in a cramped studio near the highway, barely scraping by on a government salary. I'd maintained that fiction deliberately, carefully, the way you'd maintain a levee holding back a flood, because if they knew I had money, real money, they'd want it. The concierge nodded as I entered. Good evening, Ms. Walsh. Congratulations on the news. Word traveled fast in the bureau. Someone had leaked it to the internal newsletter. Thank you, James. Will you be needing anything this evening? Privacy, I said. If anyone asks for me, anyone who shares my last name. I'm not here. His expression didn't change. Of course, ma'am. We have strict protocols. I took the elevator to the 40th floor. The doors opened directly into my apartment. No hallway, no neighbors, just 3,000 square feet of space that was entirely, completely mine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Puget Sound. Italian leather furniture. A kitchen I never used because I was always working, but it was mine. Every piece of it purchased with money I'd earned by being excellent at something that mattered. I poured myself a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the city. Somewhere down there, in that tangle of suburbs and strip malls, my family was planning Amber's big moment. They were choosing ring light angles and debating caption strategies and investing every ounce of their energy into something that would be forgotten in a week. And they'd rejected me to do it. I should have felt angry. I should have felt hurt. Instead, I felt tired. Bone-deep, existential tired. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn their attention. I'd dimmed my own light so Amber could shine. I'd swallowed my achievements, minimized my successes, made myself small and quiet and invisible because that was the only way to keep the peace. And it had never been enough. It would never be enough. I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts. Patricia and Daniel Walsh stared back at me, stripped of their parental titles, but still there, still taking up space. I called the NIB event coordinator. National Infrastructure Bureau Events, this is Sarah Chen speaking. Sarah, this is Rebecca Walsh. Oh, Ms. Walsh. Her voice brightened. We're so excited about the ceremony. I have your family down for 3 VIP seats at Table 1. We're arranging the transportation schedule now. Cancel them, I said. Silence. I'm sorry? Cancel the guest reservations. Remove Patricia Walsh, Daniel Walsh, and Amber Walsh from the security clearance list. They won't be attending. Oh. A pause. Is everything all right? Everything's fine. I want to reallocate those seats. Please issue invitations to Director Harrison Blake. The director is already attending, ma'am. He's giving the opening remarks. Then put him at my table. And add Kevin O'Brien from the hydrology department and Jennifer Mitchell from geological survey. Another pause. You want your colleagues at your personal table instead of your family? They are my family, I said. The only family that matters. Understood, Ms. Walsh. I'll update the protocols immediately. And for the press materials, should we adjust the biographical section? It currently mentions, strike all references to family from my bio. Focus entirely on Project Aegis and my technical achievements. Done. Is there anything else? No. Thank you, Sarah. I hung up and immediately felt lighter, as if I'd put down a weight I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand upright. My phone buzzed, a text from Kevin. Hey, weird question. Did you just add me to your DC guest list? I smiled despite myself. Yes. Hope that's okay. 3 dots appeared. Then, are you kidding? I'd be honored. Is your family not coming? No. Their loss. 2 words. Simple. True. I set the phone down and walked to my bedroom. For the first time in weeks, I thought I might actually sleep. Thursday, 10:30 a.m. The text message. I was in a briefing about seismic retrofitting for the I-90 corridor when my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. I ignored it. Then it buzzed again and again. During the break, I checked. 7 missed calls from Patricia, 4 from Daniel, 12 texts from Amber. I opened the group chat, the Walsh family thread that had existed since my mother discovered group messaging. Amber, OMG, did you see the forecast for October 14th? It might rain. We need a backup plan for outdoor photos. Patricia, I'm calling that tent rental place. We can't have rain ruining the red carpet moment, Daniel. How much is the tent? We're already over budget. Amber, Dad, it's an investment. I scrolled past weeks of messages I'd never responded to. Every conversation was about Amber's event. Every discussion revolved around her needs, her fears, her dreams. I was mentioned exactly twice. Becca, can you pick up the dry cleaning? Has anyone heard from Rebecca? We need her to fix the printer. I took a screenshot of my airline confirmation, the business class ticket the Bureau had booked. First class had been sold out, but business class on a transcon flight still cost over $2,000. It showed the Willard Hotel reservation, the 5-star historic property where presidents stayed. I uploaded it to the group chat. Rebecca, the Bureau is flying me business class to D.C. I've spoken with the event coordinators and they can arrange first-class travel and accommodations for my guests as well. All expenses paid. Please reconsider. I hit send and watched the read receipts appear immediately. 1 minute passed, 2 minutes. The 3 dots appeared. Someone was typing. Amber, seriously? You're still on about this? Stop showing off, Becca. Nobody cares about your fancy plane seat. We're going to an A-list event. We don't have time for stupid awards. I stared at those words. Stupid awards. Then my mother's message appeared. She'd liked Amber's message. Then my father. Don't blame us for not going, Rebecca. You need to learn to support your sister instead of being jealous and trying to drag attention to your boring work. We're busy building a brand here. I read the messages twice. I analyzed them like I'd analyze structural data, looking for any sign of misunderstanding, any indication that they didn't mean exactly what they'd written. There was none. They'd called my achievement, my presidential-level recognition, stupid, and they'd done it in writing. I typed 1 word. Understood. I sent it. Then I went to the group settings and pressed Leave Conversation. A confirmation box appeared. Are you sure you want to leave Walsh family? You will no longer receive messages from this conversation. I pressed Confirm. The screen went blank where the chat had been. I went back to my contacts. Patricia Walsh, Daniel Walsh, Amber Walsh. I selected all 3 and pressed Delete. Another confirmation. This will permanently remove these contacts. Are you sure? I pressed Delete again. They vanished. I sat there in the empty conference room holding my phone, feeling the weight of 32 years lift off my shoulders like a cable snapping under tension. I'd cut the cord. The bridge to my past was demolished, and I was still standing. Friday, October 11th, 3 days before Seattle, 2 p.m. The Walsh household had descended into controlled chaos. Daniel stood in the garage, taking inventory of equipment spread across the concrete floor. 3 ring lights, 2 backup battery packs, 4 different tripods, a stabilizer gimbal that had cost $600 and that Amber had used exactly once. "We need to organize this by priority," he muttered, making notes on his tablet. "Primary equipment in one case, backups in another." "Dad!" Amber's voice shrieked from inside the house. "The package from Glowbox arrived! Get in here!" He abandoned his inventory and rushed inside. Amber stood in the living room surrounded by opened boxes. Makeup palettes were scattered across the coffee table like a rainbow explosion. Amber held up a shimmering gold eyeshadow, catching the light. "Look at this! Look at it! This is the new Stardust collection. It's not even available to the public yet, and they sent me the entire line." She was nearly breathless. "Do you know what this means?" "It means you're valued," Patricia said, emerging from the kitchen with her phone. She'd been scrolling through Instagram for the past hour, studying other influencers' event coverage. "It means they see your potential." Amber sat down and began opening palettes, swatching colors on her arm. "I'm thinking gold and rose for the main look. Dramatic, but sophisticated. And I'll bring the full palette for touch-ups because the lighting at Sky Lounge can be tricky." "What about the backup looks?" Daniel asked, pulling out his phone to film. His credit card statement had arrived that morning. $53,000 in debt, most of it from the past 6 months of investing in Amber's career. But it would pay off. It had to pay off. "Should we do a full costume change for the after party?" "Definitely. I'm thinking the silver dress for arrival, then change into the black cocktail dress after Jules Vane's performance." Patricia sat down next to Amber, watching her daughter swatch makeup with an intensity that bordered on desperation. She'd been a beauty queen once. Second runner-up. She'd lost to a girl who wasn't as pretty but who'd answered the interview questions better, who'd had substance behind the appearance. Patricia had never developed substance. She'd married Daniel, had 2 daughters, and slowly watched her youth evaporate. But Amber could do it. Amber could become everything Patricia hadn't. Beautiful and famous and rich. And then none of the past 30 years would have been wasted. "Has Rebecca called?" Amber asked suddenly, not looking up from her makeup. "No," Patricia said, her voice tight. "She's being dramatic. She'll get over it." "What if she doesn't?" "Then she doesn't." Daniel set his phone down. "We can't force her to be happy for you, sweetheart. Some people are just bitter." Amber swatched another color, a deep burgundy, and frowned. "It's weird, though. She's never pushed back before." "She's jealous," Patricia said firmly. "She's always been jealous of you, ever since you were little and people would compliment how pretty you were. She couldn't stand not being the center of attention." Amber nodded slowly, accepting this narrative because it was easier than examining the alternative, that maybe, possibly, they'd been cruel. "Forget about Rebecca," Daniel said, resuming his filming. "This weekend is about you, about your future. Now, let's get some content. Show the camera the products. Talk about how excited you are." Amber smiled her influencer smile, practiced, perfect, empty, and began her performance. 3,000 miles away, a different kind of transformation was taking place. Washington, D.C., 5 p.m. The Willard Intercontinental Hotel was the kind of place where history walked the halls. 2 blocks from the White House, it had hosted presidents, diplomats, and power brokers for over a century. The lobby dripped with old money elegance, crystal chandeliers, marble columns, velvet furniture that cost more than a car. I stood at the check-in desk while the clerk processed my reservation. "Welcome to the Willard, Ms. Walsh. We have you in the presidential suite for 3 nights." "The presidential suite?" I blinked. "I thought I was booked for a standard room." "There must have been an upgrade," she smiled. "Courtesy of the National Infrastructure Bureau, you're a VIP guest." The suite was absurd. 3 rooms, a grand piano, a dining table that seated 12, windows overlooking Pennsylvania Avenue with a direct view of the White House. I set my bag down and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting the Capitol in gold and amber light. Somewhere in that direction, in Constitution Hall, they were preparing the stage where I'd stand in 3 days. My phone rang. "Kevin, are you here yet?" he asked. "Just checked in. Jen and I are in the lobby bar. Come down, we're celebrating." "I need to unpack." "Unpack later. Come down, that's an order from your unofficial DC Social Committee." I found myself smiling. "Give me 10 minutes. I changed into jeans and a sweater, my off-duty uniform, and took the elevator down. The lobby bar was all dark wood and leather, quiet conversation and jazz playing low. Kevin and Jen sat at a corner table, already halfway through a bottle of wine. "There she is." Kevin stood and pulled out a chair. "The woman of the hour." Jen raised her glass. "To Rebecca Walsh, who's about to make us all look bad." "I'm not making anyone look bad." "You're getting a medal from the president," Kevin interrupted. "You're making us all look terrible by comparison." "Vice president," I corrected. "Director Blake told me this morning that the president might actually show up," Jen said. "Apparently, he read your Aegis white paper on Air Force One and called it the most important infrastructure document since the Interstate Highway Act." I felt my face flush. He did not say that. Direct quote. Jen refilled my wine glass. "You know what this means, right? You're going to be famous. Like, actually famous. Not respected in your field famous. Recognized at airports famous." The thought made my stomach twist. I don't want to be famous. I just want to do good work. "Too late," Kevin said gently. "You did good work. Now comes the consequence. People notice." We talked for hours, about the ceremony, about Aegis, about our projects and fears and hopes. Kevin told stories about his kids. He had 2 daughters, 6 and 8, who thought their dad's job studying water was boring but important. Jen talked about her son's college applications, the terror and pride of watching your child prepare to leave. They talked about their families with warmth and frustration and love. I stayed quiet. "Your family coming tomorrow?" Jen asked eventually. "No." She waited for elaboration. When none came, she said carefully, "That must be hard." "It's fine." "Rebecca?" "It's fine," I repeated with more force. "They made their choice. I made mine. It's done." Kevin exchanged a look with Jen, then changed the subject. But later, as we were leaving, Kevin caught my arm. "You know you're allowed to not be fine, right? You're allowed to be hurt." "I know." "Do you?" I looked at him, this kind, steady man who'd brought me coffee for 3 years and never asked for anything in return, who'd volunteered to fly across the country just to sit next to me at dinner. "I'm working on it," I said finally. Saturday, October 12th, 2 days before Seattle. Morning Amber woke up at 6 a.m., even though the event wasn't until Monday. She couldn't sleep. She scrolled through Instagram, watching other influencers prepare for their own events, comparing their engagement to hers. 15,000 followers. That's where she'd been stuck for 8 months. The algorithm hated her, or maybe people were just getting tired of her content. Maybe she wasn't interesting enough, pretty enough, clever enough. Maybe her parents were wrong. The thought appeared before she could stop it, and it terrified her. She got out of bed and went to the mirror. At 28, she could still see traces of the teenager who'd been told she was special, who'd been promised that beauty would open every door, but doors weren't opening. Brands were sending free products, sure, but they weren't offering real contracts. Nobody was paying her enough to live on. She was still on her parents' phone plan, still using her father's credit card for groceries, still living in the guest room of her childhood home, still dependent, still nothing. She opened her laptop and looked at her analytics. The Glowbox posts were performing okay, about 8,000 impressions each, but the engagement rate was dropping. 3%. That was bad. That was, the algorithm is burying you bad. She clicked over to Rebecca's name. She'd never followed her sister's work, but she was curious. A Google search for Rebecca Walsh NIB returned pages of results. National Infrastructure Bureau announces Aegis system. Senior analyst Walsh prevents. Dam catastrophe. Presidential science advisor praises Walsh's innovation. There were academic papers with Rebecca's name in the byline. Conference presentations, government press releases, and there, on the NIB website, was a photo Amber had never seen. Rebecca, in a hard hat and safety vest, standing on a bridge with the Columbia River behind her. She wasn't smiling for the camera. She wasn't posing. She was pointing at something, explaining something to a colleague, completely absorbed in her work. She looked confident, competent, real. Amber closed the laptop quickly, feeling something uncomfortable twist in her chest. Washington, D.C. Evening. I stood in front of the three-way mirror at a boutique on K Street, looking at a stranger. The dress was midnight blue velvet, architectural in its construction. Sharp shoulders, a plunging neckline that was severe rather than sexy. It fit my body like armor, protective but powerful. "It's perfect," the stylist said. "You look like a woman who could hold up the world." "That's the job description," I said. Then, "This is the uniform." The dress cost $3,500. I didn't blink at the price. I'd spent years being practical, being frugal, being invisible. Not anymore. "I'll take it," I said. "And the shoes." That evening, I met Harrison for dinner at a quiet restaurant near the Capitol. It was just the two of us sitting in a corner booth while Washington's power players conducted business around us. "How are you feeling?" he asked. "Terrified." "Good. Means you understand the stakes." He cut into his steak. "Your family really not coming?" "No." He nodded slowly. "My daughter lives in Portland. Haven't spoken to her in 5 years. You know why?" I shook my head. "Because I chose work over her dance recitals, over her graduation, over every small moment that seemed less important than whatever crisis I was managing." He set down his fork. "I told myself I was providing for her, building a legacy, making sacrifices." What were you really doing? Running away from the terrifying prospect of being present, of being vulnerable. He looked at me directly. "Don't make my mistakes, Rebecca. Don't let work consume everything. Even if your family doesn't deserve you, make sure you build connections with people who do. I have you, Kevin, Jen. That's a start. But don't close yourself off entirely. The strongest structures have some flexibility. The rigid ones snap." I thought about that later, alone in my absurd suite with its grand piano and presidential view. Harrison was right. I'd built walls so high that nothing could get in. Not pain, but also not joy. Not rejection, but also not love. I'd become structurally perfect and emotionally isolated. But that was a problem for after the ceremony. First, I had to get through the next 48 hours. Monday, October 14th, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Constitution Hall, Washington, D.C. The black town car glided to a stop in front of Constitution Hall at exactly 6 p.m. The sun was setting, casting the limestone columns in amber light. I took a deep breath. "Ready, Ms. Walsh?" the driver asked. "No, but let's go anyway." The door opened. I stepped out onto the red carpet, an actual, literal red carpet, and the world shifted. Photographers I hadn't noticed suddenly materialized, cameras clicking. Not paparazzi. These were official White House photographers documenting history. A man in a tailored suit approached with his hand extended. "Ms. Walsh, I'm General Higgins, Army Corps of Engineers. It's an honor to finally meet the architect of Aegis." I shook his hand, trying not to show how surreal this felt. This morning I'd been debugging code. Tonight I was shaking hands with a 3-star general. "The honor's mine, sir." "Please, let me escort you inside." We walked up the steps together. Around us, other guests were arriving. Senators I recognized from television, business leaders, scientists. These weren't celebrities. They were the people who actually ran things, who made decisions that affected millions of lives. And somehow, I was one of them. Inside, the lobby was breathtaking, marble and gold leaf. The air smelled of expensive cologne and old power. "Rebecca!" I turned to see Kevin, Harrison, and Jen standing near a pillar. Kevin was tugging at his bow tie like it was strangling him. Jen looked stunning in a green dress I'd never seen her wear. "You clean up nice, Walsh," Harrison said, his eyes twinkling. "You too, sir. Ready for your close-up?" Before I could answer, a coordinator appeared. "Ms. Walsh, we're seating now. You're at Table 1. Table 1 was directly in front of the podium. As I sat down, I noticed the placard on the chair next to mine. Reserved. Vice President of the United States. Kevin leaned over. "You're sitting next to the Vice President. No big deal. Totally normal Monday." "Kevin, just breathe. You belong here." The lights dimmed. Conversation quieted to whispers. The ceremony was beginning. 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Seattle Sky Lounge, downtown Seattle. The Walsh family arrived at Sky Lounge at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 2 hours before the event officially started. Amber wanted to secure the perfect spot for photos before the venue got crowded. The club was already chaos. The air conditioning was broken. The temperature inside was approaching 80 degrees. Hundreds of people, mostly teenagers and aspiring influencers, pressed against velvet ropes, all holding phones, all desperate to be seen. "Drop us at the front," Amber commanded from the back seat. "I can't," Daniel said, gripping the steering wheel. "The police have the lane blocked. We have to park in this garage." "Are you kidding me? I'm wearing 5-inch heels." They parked 3 blocks away. By the time they reached the entrance, Amber's carefully styled hair was beginning to frizz in the Seattle humidity. She marched up to the bouncer with her phone out. "Tiffany Walsh +2 VIP." The bouncer scanned her QR code. The machine beeped, low and flat. "General admission." "Excuse me?" Amber's voice went shrill. "There must be a mistake. I'm an influencer. I was invited by the PR team. Says here general admission priority. You get in before walk-ins, but after VIPs already inside, back of the line." "Do you know who I am?" "Ma'am, I've checked 200 IDs tonight. Unless you're Jules Vane, I don't know who you are. Back of the line." Daniel tried to intervene. "Look, there's been a misunderstanding. Sir, back of the line." They ended up in the general admission queue, squeezed between college students who smelled like cheap beer and a woman dressed as a giant lipstick tube. "This is humiliating," Amber hissed. "Mom, this is humiliating." Patricia gripped her knockoff designer handbag and tried to smile. "It's fine, honey. We'll get inside and everything will be fine." But it wasn't fine. Inside, the Sky Lounge was a sauna. The broken AC had turned the club into a humid box smelling of sweat and desperation. The VIP section was a small roped-off area near the emergency exit. Jules Vane was nowhere to be seen. "Where is she?" Amber stood on her toes, scanning the crowd. "Maybe she's in the back?" Patricia suggested. "I need a drink," Daniel said. "It's 1,000 degrees in here." He fought his way to the bar and returned 10 minutes later, empty-handed. "They're out of the signature cocktail, and they're charging $20 for beer. I left my wallet in the car because I thought this was an open bar." Amber grabbed a dirty glass someone had left on a high-top table and posed with it, pretending to toast. "Dad, get the ring light. We can still make this work." Daniel pulled out the light. Patricia smoothed Amber's hair. And then the television screens throughout the club flickered. 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Constitution Hall. The lights in Constitution Hall dissolved to black. 500 people went silent. A single spotlight hit the podium. Julian Sterling, the news anchor, the legend, the man whose voice had narrated history for 40 years, walked out. "History," he began, his voice rolling through the hall like thunder, "is often written by the loud, but civilization is built by the quiet." The screen behind him, an IMAX-sized display, exploded with light. It showed bridges swaying in hurricanes, dams holding back oceans, buildings standing while earthquakes shook the earth. Then my face appeared. A photo from the Black Ridge Dam site. Hard hat, wind-blown hair, pointing at the spillway with absolute certainty. "In a world of noise, she is the signal," Sterling's voice continued. "In a world of cracks, she is the mortar. Rebecca Walsh doesn't seek the spotlight, but tonight, the spotlight seeks her. The video was extraordinary. High budget, professionally shot. It showed simulations of Aegis predicting failures, showed the Black Ridge Dam collapse, showed me in the control room making the call that saved 12,000 lives. The room erupted in applause. Sterling raised his hand for silence. Please welcome to the stage the President of the United States. The room exploded. The president wasn't supposed to be there. The schedule said vice president. But there he was, walking onto the stage, and suddenly this wasn't just a ceremony. It was history. 3:02 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Sky Lounge. The bartender grabbed the remote and switched every screen in the club to the breaking news feed. The music died instantly. Suddenly, every television in Sky Lounge showed the same image. Constitution Hall. The President of the United States. And me, standing at a podium in a midnight blue dress, looking like I owned the world. The caption read, Rebecca Walsh, Chief Architect, Project Aegis, Silver Star recipient, $500,000 grant. Amber's phone slipped from her hand. It shattered on the concrete floor. She didn't notice. That's, Patricia whispered. That's Rebecca. Daniel's face had gone the color of old concrete. He stared at the screen where I was shaking hands with the president while the vice president applauded. $500,000, he muttered. The number seemed to break something in his brain. The club had gone quiet. People were pointing at the screens. Then someone shouted from the crowd, Wait, isn't that the girl who was just live streaming? Another voice, That's her sister! I follow her! Amber's phone, cracked but still recording, lay on the floor, still streaming. Her viewer count had exploded, 300 viewers to 5,000 in 30 seconds. But they weren't there for her. The comments scrolled past. Is that your sister? OMG, your sister is with the president. You said she worked in sewers, LMAO. Imagine choosing this dump over meeting the president L family. A reporter shoved through the crowd. Kevin Riles, freelance journalist, phone recording. You're Robert Walsh, correct? Rebecca Walsh's father? Daniel couldn't speak. Can you explain why you're at a nightclub while your daughter is receiving the highest civilian honor in Washington, D.C.? Daniel started. It's a scheduling conflict, Patricia interrupted, her smile brittle and desperate. We're so proud of Rebecca. So proud. We had a prior family commitment. The internet is saying she invited you and you called her award stupid. Is that true? Patricia's face went from pale to blotchy red. I have no comment. And then the final nail. Jules Vane appeared on the small stage. The pop star, the reason they'd sacrificed their relationship with me, the woman Amber had worshipped. She looked at the screens showing my face. She looked at the crowd. She raised her microphone. Seattle! I know we're here to celebrate beauty tonight, but I want to take a second to celebrate real power. She pointed at the screen. At me. That's Rebecca Walsh up there. I just read on Twitter that she saved an entire town from flooding. Can we make some noise for a real-life superhero? The crowd cheered. For me. Jules continued. That's what I call a boss. Smart is sexy, y'all. Never forget that. Glow Cosmetics is great, but saving the world? That's the ultimate glow-up. Congratulations, Rebecca Walsh, wherever you are. Amber stood there in her expensive sponsored dress, surrounded by strangers cheering for her sister. She didn't exist. Even at her own party, she didn't exist. We're leaving, Daniel said. Now. They pushed through the crowd. People stepped aside, not out of respect, but to film them, to document the family of the national hero, exposed and humiliated. They burst out the emergency exit into the rain. Amber leaned against the wet brick wall of the alley and threw up. Patricia tried to put a hand on her shoulder. Amber shoved her away. Don't touch me. Honey, you said she was nobody. You said she'd never amount to anything. Amber's voice broke. You said I was special. You said I was the one who would make it. You are special. I'm nothing, Amber screamed. I'm a joke. I'm a fake. I'm a 28-year-old woman who lives with her parents and pretends to be famous on Instagram. Amber, calm down. And she's real. Rebecca's always been real, and we treated her like garbage. Daniel grabbed Amber's arm. Get in the car. They drove home in silence, rain hammering the windshield, the GPS announcing turns that nobody heard. Behind them, the city lights blurred into nothing. 3,000 miles away, I was standing on a stage, holding a medal, making a speech that would be quoted for years. I didn't know about the collapse in Seattle yet, but I would, and when I did, I wouldn't feel victorious. I'd feel sad, because I'd realized something in that moment, standing in the spotlight with the President of the United States. Victory without witnesses isn't victory. It's just loneliness with better lighting. Monday, October 14th, 9 p.m., Eastern Standard Time. I stood on the balcony of Constitution Hall, looking out at the Washington Monument piercing the night sky. The ceremony had ended an hour ago, but guests were still inside, networking and celebrating. Through the glass doors behind me, I could hear laughter and the clink of champagne glasses. My phone had been vibrating nonstop in my clutch purse. I'd ignored it during the ceremony. You don't check your phone while the president is speaking. But now, curiosity got the better of me. I pulled it out and turned it on. The screen nearly vibrated out of my hand. 847 notifications. I blinked at the number. That couldn't be right. I opened my messages first. Texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Saw you on CNN. You're incredible. My daughter wants to be an engineer because of you. Thank you for your service. Then emails, hundreds of them. Interview requests from major news networks. Speaking invitations. Job offers from private companies offering salaries I couldn't comprehend. And then I opened social media. My Twitter account, which I'd created years ago and never used, had gained 200,000 followers in 6 hours. My last tweet had been from 2019. Interesting paper on load distribution in suspension bridges. It had 3 likes. My first post-ceremony tweet, automatically generated when the White House tagged me, had 2.3 million impressions. I searched my own name. Hashtag Rebecca Walsh was trending worldwide. Number 3, right below a political scandal and a celebrity divorce. I clicked the hashtag and immediately wished I hadn't. The internet had found everything. There were clips from the ceremony, professional footage of me speaking, of the president pinning the medal on my dress, of me shaking hands with the vice president. But there were also amateur videos I'd never seen. Someone had filmed the Walsh family at Sky Lounge. The video was grainy, shot on a phone, but the audio was clear enough. Daniel's voice. "Where is she? This is humiliating." Amber, nearly in tears. "Everyone's talking about Rebecca. They're all looking at their phones instead of watching Jules." Patricia. "This is her fault. She did this on purpose to ruin your night." The video had 5 million views. The comments were brutal. They really thought a lipstick party was more important than the White House. This is her fault. The audacity main character syndrome, but make it an entire family. I kept scrolling, unable to stop, like watching a bridge collapse in slow motion. Then I found the tweet that had started the wildfire. A user named at dataminer999 had posted a screenshot, an old Facebook post from 2 years ago. Daniel's Facebook. I recognized his profile picture, him standing next to his Lexus. The post read, "Proud of both my girls today. Amber booked a photo shoot with a local magazine, future supermodel, and Rebecca got some kind of promotion at her government job. She inspects sewer systems and drainage permits. Not glamorous, but it's stable work. Amber is going to be a star." The tweet had 800,000 likes. The top comment, "Inspects sewer systems. She literally saves cities. This man has no idea who his daughter is." Another, "Amber couldn't book a dentist appointment by herself and he called her the star. I'm sick." A third, "This is what happens when parents pick favorites. One daughter becomes extraordinary despite them. The other becomes dependent because of them." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not satisfaction, not vindication, sadness, because they'd written it themselves. I hadn't leaked anything. I hadn't exposed them. They'd exposed themselves, and the internet had simply held up a mirror. My phone rang. Kevin. "Are you seeing this?" he asked without preamble. "I'm seeing it." "It's everywhere, Rebecca. CNN is running a segment called The Cost of Neglect. The Washington Post wants an interview about family dynamics and achievement. He paused. "This is bigger than the ceremony. You've become a symbol." A symbol of what? Every daughter who was overlooked. Every person who was told they weren't good enough. You're the revenge arc people dream about but never get. He hesitated. "How do you feel?" I looked out at the monument, glowing white in the darkness. "Tired," I said. "I feel tired." Tuesday, October 15th, 2 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Seattle. Amber sat on the floor of her childhood bedroom. She'd never stopped thinking of it as a childhood bedroom, even though she was 28, with her laptop open, watching her life disintegrate in real time. Her Instagram follower count had dropped from 15,000 to 11,000 in 6 hours. Sponsors were pulling out. Glowbox had sent an email at midnight. "Due to recent public perception issues, we've decided to move in a different direction. Thank you for your collaboration." The lipstick palette they'd sent, the one that wasn't even available to the public yet, sat on her dresser, mocking her. She'd built 5 years of her life around this. 5 years of perfect photos and careful captions and endless engagement metrics. 5 years of pretending to be happy, pretending to be successful, pretending to be someone people wanted to watch. And it had fallen apart in one night. She clicked through her old posts, looking at them with new eyes. The forced smiles, the staged spontaneity, the carefully curated life that was actually just her parents' house with good lighting. She found a photo from 3 years ago, Thanksgiving dinner. In the background, barely visible, was Rebecca. She was looking away from the camera, uncomfortable, while Amber dominated the frame. The caption read, "So blessed to have family time. #grateful. #family. First Thanksgiving." Amber looked at that photo and felt sick. In the comments, someone had just written, "Your sister wasn't family first, she was just present. There's a difference." She closed the laptop and lay down on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Hey Amber, this is Jen Mitchell. We met once at the NIB office party. I'm in DC with Rebecca. She doesn't know I'm reaching out. I just wanted you to know. She's not celebrating this. She's not happy about what's happening to you. She's hurting too." Amber stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed, "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I know sorry isn't enough, but tell her anyway." She hit send and turned off her phone. In the next room, she could hear her parents arguing. "This is a nightmare," Patricia's voice, sharp with panic. "Linda called from the book club. She said she saw the videos. Everyone's talking about us." "Let them talk," Daniel said, but his voice sounded hollow. "This will blow over. Internet drama always does." "Will it? They're calling us narcissists, abusers. They're saying we destroyed both our daughters." "We didn't destroy anyone. We supported Amber. We enabled her. We let her waste 5 years chasing a fantasy instead of building a real career. And Rebecca..." Patricia's voice broke. "We treated her like hired help." "Don't rewrite history, Patricia. Rebecca chose to be distant. She chose her work over family." "We chose Amber over her," Patricia screamed. "Every single time. Every birthday, every achievement, every moment she needed us. We chose Amber." Silence. Then Daniel, quieter. "What do we do?" "I don't know." Amber pulled her pillow over her head, trying to block out the sound of her family falling apart, but she could still hear it. She could hear everything now. Wednesday, October 16th, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. NIB, Seattle Field Office. I'd taken the red-eye back to Seattle, arriving at 6 a.m. with jet lag and a headache that felt like someone was driving railroad spikes through my skull. I should have gone home. I should have slept. Instead, I went to work. The NIB Seattle Field Office was a secure facility in the tech district, nothing like the headquarters compound, but still serious. Badge access, retina scanners, armed security. I was at my desk reviewing seismic data when my intercom buzzed. "Ms. Walsh?" Thomas Miller, chief of security. His voice was tight. "We have a situation at the main gate." I didn't need to guess. "How many of them?" "3. 2 middle-aged adults and a young woman. They have a film crew with them." Of course they did. "Put it on my monitor." The security feed appeared on my secondary screen. There they were. Daniel in a suit that looked like he'd slept in it, Patricia clutching a bouquet of supermarket roses, and Amber in a pale yellow sundress, a calculated wardrobe choice meant to project innocent sincerity. Behind them, 2 guys with handheld cameras circled like sharks. Amber was directing them, gesturing to the building, clearly explaining their spontaneous reunion plan. I watched my father approach the security desk. Even without audio, I could read his body language, the puffed chest, the aggressive pointing, the entitled expectation that he'd be let through because he was someone's father. The desk officer shook his head. Daniel's face turned red. "Audio," I said into the intercom. Miller patched through the directional microphone. "Don't understand," Amber was saying, her voice pitched high for the cameras. "We're here to support her. We're family. You can't stop us from seeing our own daughter." "Sister," Daniel corrected. Then, to the officer, "I raised her. I paid for her education." That was a lie. I'd paid for my own education with scholarships and work-study programs while they paid for Amber's social media coaching courses. "And we deserve to see her," Daniel finished. "This is discrimination. Family has rights." The officer's voice was patient but firm. "Ms. Walsh has placed you on the permanent exclusion list. You are not permitted within 500 feet of this facility or any NIB building." "Exclusion list?" Patricia's voice cracked. That's illegal. She can't do that to her own parents." "Ma'am, she absolutely can. This is federal property. If you don't leave immediately, I'll call Seattle PD." "Call them!" Daniel shouted, and I saw the moment his desperation overwhelmed his judgment. "Because I'm not leaving until I get what I'm owed. Do you know how much money she just won? $500,000. That's family money. I invested in her. I fed her, clothed her, put a roof over her head for 18 years. That constitutes a financial stake." He was screaming it, into cameras, on federal property. I closed my eyes. I opened my laptop and checked Twitter. Someone had already clipped the audio from the security feed. They were streaming it live on some influencer drama channel I'd never heard of. The clip was titled, "Rebecca Walsh's father demands his cut of her award money." It had gone viral in minutes, but then I saw something else. Another trending topic, #WalshFamilyReceipts. A thread from @dataminer999. Since people are asking for more context on the Walsh family dynamic, here's what I found in public records and social media archives. Thread 1/ In 2022, Rebecca Walsh paid off her parents' mortgage. Total amount, $340,000. Here's the public record from King County. Screenshot 2/ In 2021, Rebecca co-signed a car loan for Amber Walsh. When Amber defaulted, Rebecca paid off the remaining $28,000. Here's the credit filing. Screenshot 3/ tax records show Rebecca has been claiming her parents as dependents for the last 3 years, meaning she's been supporting them financially. Screenshot 4/. Meanwhile, Daniel Walsh's Facebook shows him buying a $15,000 camera setup for Amber's influencer career, the same month Rebecca paid off their mortgage. Screenshot 5/ Patricia Walsh posted about a girls' trip to Cabo with Amber in 2023, cost estimated at $8,000. 2 weeks later, Rebecca paid for Daniel's hip surgery. Screenshots 6/ There are 0 Facebook posts about Rebecca's achievements. Not her MIT acceptance, which she turned down to stay local for family. Not her bureau promotion. Not her role in preventing the Black Ridge Dam disaster. Nothing. 7/. But there are 247 posts about Amber. Photo shoots, brand deals, my influencer daughter, etc. The pattern is clear. One daughter was the ATM, the other was the trophy. And when the ATM became famous, the family panicked because their cash flow was about to end. I stared at the thread. I'd never posted about the money. I'd never told anyone. But public records didn't lie, and the internet was very, very good at finding patterns. Back on my security monitor, Chief Miller had arrived. He was a 6'4" former Special Forces soldier who did not tolerate drama. He walked up to Daniel and handed him a piece of paper, a trespass notice. Daniel read it and recoiled like it was radioactive. "This is insane!" he shouted. "I'm her father. You can't ban me from seeing my own daughter." "Sir, step back." "I will not step back. Not until I get what I'm owed. She owes us. We made her." Daniel grabbed Miller's jacket. That was a mistake. Miller executed a textbook wrist lock that put Daniel on his knees in under 2 seconds. No violence, just physics and leverage. "Rebecca!" Amber screamed at the building as if I could hear her. "Please, we just want to talk. We're sorry, we made a mistake." Patricia was crying, clutching her knockoff purse, and the cameras captured all of it. 2 Seattle PD cruisers pulled up. Wednesday, 8 p.m. I sat in my penthouse apartment staring at the city lights when my phone rang. Unknown number. I should have let it go to voicemail. But some stubborn part of me, the part that still remembered being their daughter, answered. "Hello?" "You bitch!" Patricia's voice, but not the controlled, image-conscious Patricia I'd known. This was something raw and venomous. My hand moved automatically to the recording app on my phone. I pressed record. "Patricia," I said calmly. "How did you get this number?" "Don't you dare call me Patricia! I'm your mother. I gave birth to you, and this is how you repay me? You have us arrested? You destroy your sister's career? You make us a laughingstock? I didn't have you arrested. You assaulted a federal officer." "Bullshit!" Daniel's voice, shouting over Patricia's. They were both on the line. "You set us up. You wanted this. You wanted revenge because we didn't kiss your ass at some stupid government dinner. It wasn't a dinner, Dad. It was—" "I don't care what it was," he roared. "You're going to fix this. You're going to go on TV and tell everyone this was a misunderstanding. You're going to tell them we're a loving family and you're just difficult," Patricia supplied. "You've always been difficult. Cold. Even as a baby, you never cried. You just stared at us with those judgmental eyes." "This is pointless," I said. "I'm hanging up." "We need money," Daniel shouted. "We need that money, Rebecca. We're losing the house. I paid off your house 2 years ago. We remortgaged it for Amber's career, and now she has nothing. She's been blacklisted, she's getting death threats, and it's your fault. How is it my fault that you chose to invest in something with no return?" "You want to know how?" Daniel's voice dropped to something low and dangerous. "Because you're selfish. You're a cold, unfeeling monster who never cared about this family, and now you're going to pay." "Pay?" "You're going to give us half that prize money, $250,000. Compensation for the emotional distress you've caused, for the therapy Amber's going to need, for the damage to our reputation." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "That's extortion." "It's justice!" Patricia screamed. "You owe us. We raised you. We sacrificed for you." "Name one thing you sacrificed." Silence. Then Daniel. "You want to play hardball? Fine. I'll go to the press. I'll tell them you were abusive growing up, that you stole money from us, that you isolated Amber out of jealousy. I'll make up whatever I need to make up to destroy you." My hand tightened on the phone. "Are you threatening to blackmail me?" "I'm promising you consequences," he said. "You built this perfect reputation, this hero image. What happens when I tear it down? When I tell everyone you're a sociopath who abandoned her family? Nobody will believe you. Are you sure? I'm a heartbroken father. Amber's a devastated sister. Your mother is in tears. We'll do the interview circuit. We'll write a book. We'll make you the villain of our redemption story." Amber's voice, quieter than the others. "Dad, stop." "Shut up, Amber. This is for you. This is to save you." "Dad, please." "You're going to wire the money by Friday," Daniel continued. "Or I start making calls, every news outlet, every podcast, every tabloid. I'll say you were violent. I'll say you threatened us. I'll say whatever I have to say. Even if it's not true, truth doesn't matter. Publicity does. And I'll bury you." I looked at the recording app on my phone. The timer showed 12 minutes, 17 seconds. "Are you done?" I asked. "We're done when we see the check." "No," I said quietly. "We're done now." I hung up. Then I sent the audio file to 3 places: my attorney, the NIB legal department, and my personal backup drive. Within the hour, my attorney called back. "Rebecca, this is a prosecutable crime. This is extortion with the threats of defamation. We can get a restraining order tonight. We can press criminal charges tomorrow." "Do it," I said. "All of it." "Are you sure? This will be public. It'll be messy." "They made it public when they showed up at my office with cameras. I'm just documenting the consequences." Friday, October 18th, 7 p.m. I'd rented the private dining room at the Obsidian, Seattle's most exclusive restaurant, for one reason. I wanted to celebrate with people who actually gave a damn about me. 20 guests surrounded the long table. Harrison had flown back from D.C. specifically for this. Kevin and Jen sat on either side of me. There were colleagues from the Bureau, the mayor of Seattle, who'd suddenly discovered a passionate interest in infrastructure funding, and my legal team. The room was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the city, white tablecloths, crystal. The kind of place where entrees didn't have prices on the menu because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. We were midway through the second course, seared scallops with truffle reduction, when I heard the commotion. The sound of raised voices in the hallway. A scuffle. Then Amber's unmistakable shriek. "Don't touch me! She's my sister! She's paying for this dinner! You can't keep me out!" The entire table went silent. Harrison looked at me, fork halfway to his mouth. "Rebecca?" I set my napkin down carefully. "Let them in." "Ms. Walsh, are you certain?" My head of security was at my elbow. "They're agitated. This could get ugly." "It's already ugly. Open the doors. Let's finish this." The heavy oak doors swung open. The Walsh family spilled into the room like a wound opening. They looked destroyed. Daniel's suit was wrinkled and stained. Patricia was pale, shaking, her eyes red from crying. Amber had clearly tried to put herself together. Minimal makeup, hair pulled back, but she looked hollow. "Naomi!" Daniel shouted, using the wrong name in his panic. Then, catching himself, "Rebecca, you can't hide from us forever." He marched into the center of the room, ignoring the mayor, ignoring Harrison, ignoring the titans of Seattle's elite society who were watching with expressions of horrified fascination. "How dare you!" he shouted. "How dare you lock us out! Sick the police on us! Destroy us publicly! We're your family!" "We lost everything," Amber sobbed, collapsing into a chair. "I can't go anywhere without people laughing at me. I can't work. I can't post. My entire life is gone." Patricia clutched her purse. I noticed now it was a fake Prada, the stitching irregular, and her voice trembled. "Please, Rebecca, please. We'll do anything. Just make this stop." Daniel pointed a shaking finger at me. "That $500,000 is family property. We made you. We invested in you." "You invested in Amber," I said quietly. My voice was calm, but in the acoustically perfect room it carried to every corner. "You invested every cent you had, plus money you borrowed, plus money you took from me, into a fantasy. She's our daughter." "So am I." The 2 words fell like hammers. "You want to talk about investment?" I stood up. "Let's talk about it." I walked to the small podium where the sommelier had been managing the wine service. I picked up the tablet that controlled the room's audiovisual system. "You came here tonight to tell your side of the story," I said, looking at the 3 of them. "You want these people, the mayor, the director, Seattle's business leaders, to know who I really am, correct?" "Yes," Amber whispered. "Tell them how you abandoned us, how you cut us off without warning." "Without warning?" I tapped the screen. "Let's define our terms." The massive flat-screen television on the far wall, which had been displaying a tasteful digital fireplace, suddenly shifted. It showed a screenshot of a text thread blown up to 60 inches. Crystal clear. Undeniable. Amber. "We don't have time for stupid awards." Daniel. Don't blame us if we don't go. You need to learn to support your sister instead of being jealous. Patricia liked Amber's message. A collective gasp went through the room. The mayor leaned in to read, his expression darkening. Harrison shook his head slowly, disgust clear on his face. That's out of context, Amber shrieked, jumping to her feet. We were busy. We had commitments. Sit down, I said. It wasn't loud, but there was something in my voice, the same voice I used in the control room when I gave orders that couldn't be questioned, that made Amber sit immediately. You said you didn't have time, I continued, but you seem to have plenty of time now. Interesting how that works when there's money on the table. Those are just texts, Daniel argued, sweat pouring down his face. People say things they don't mean. It doesn't prove anything. You're right. Texts can be misinterpreted, so let's add context. I tapped the screen again. The audio file began to play. Daniel's voice boomed through the restaurant's sound system, filling the elegant space with his venom. You're just a mechanic who got lucky. That money belongs to this house. We fed you. We clothed you. That constitutes a financial stake. My father's face went from red to an ashen gray. The recording continued. You're going to give us half that prize money or I'll tell the press lies about you. I'll say you were abusive. I'll say you're mentally unstable. I'll make up whatever I need to make up to destroy you. The silence that followed was absolute. The mayor was already signaling his aide, distancing himself from the radioactive waste that was the Walsh family. My attorneys were pulling out their phones, drafting motions. Patricia covered her mouth with her hand. Daniel looked at the faces around the room, faces filled with contempt and judgment, and seemed to shrink. I turned off the audio and walked toward them. I stopped 5 feet away, close enough to be heard, far enough to stay safe. You wanted attention, I said softly. You wanted the spotlight. Well, look around. You have the attention of the mayor of Seattle. You have the attention of the director of the National Infrastructure Bureau. You have the attention of my legal team, who are currently filing criminal charges for extortion. I looked at Amber. She was crying silently, and for the first time, they looked like real tears. You said I didn't have time for stupid awards, I continued. Well, I don't have time for stupid regrets either. I looked at my parents. For 32 years, I waited for you to see me. I waited for you to notice that I was drowning while you applauded Amber for floating. But you were blind, and now that I'm shining too bright to ignore, you want to claim ownership of the light. I pointed to the door. From this moment forward, I'm not your daughter. I'm not your sister. I'm Rebecca Walsh. I'm the woman who saves cities, and I don't owe you a single goddamn thing. I turned to security. Get them out. With pleasure, Ms. Walsh. This time, there was no resistance. Daniel looked at the room full of Seattle's power structure and realized he'd lost. Not just his daughter, not just his standing. He'd lost everything. Security grabbed them by the arms and escorted them out. As they reached the door, Amber looked back at me one last time. Her mouth formed words. I'm sorry. But I'd already turned away. The doors closed. The silence returned. Harrison stood and raised his glass. To Rebecca, to the strongest structure I know. To Rebecca, the room echoed. I sat down, picked up my wine, and clinked glasses with Kevin. You okay? He whispered. No, I said honestly. But I will be. The dinner continued. We talked about the future, about new projects, about possibilities. But later, alone in my penthouse, I stood by the window and looked at the city. I pulled out my phone and went to my blocked contacts. I selected all 3 Walsh names, and I hit delete. No backup, no cloud save, just gone. I took a sip of wine and looked at my reflection in the glass. I'd won. I'd cut them out. I'd protected myself. So why did I feel so hollow? Victory, I was learning, looked a lot like loneliness when you stood at the top alone. Saturday, October 19th, 3 a.m. My phone rang, waking me from restless sleep. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Rebecca? A woman's voice. Not Patricia. Familiar but strained. This is Jen Mitchell. Jen, what's wrong? It's 3 in the morning. I know, I'm sorry. I'm at Harborview Hospital. She paused. It's about your mother. My blood went cold. What happened? She had a heart attack, about 2 hours ago. They admitted her to the ICU. Your sister called me. She got my number from the office directory. She's been trying to reach you. I deleted their numbers. I know. That's why she called me. Jen's voice was gentle. Rebecca, you don't owe them anything, but I thought you should know. Your mom she's asking for you. I sat up in bed, my heart pounding. Is she going to be okay? The doctors aren't sure yet. It's serious. I closed my eyes. 36 hours ago, I'd publicly destroyed my family. I'd exposed them. I'd cut them out of my life with surgical precision. And now Patricia was in the ICU, and despite everything, despite the cruelty, the neglect, the 32 years of being invisible, I felt my chest tighten with something that felt dangerously close to guilt. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Rebecca, I know what you're going to say. I know I don't owe them anything, but I need to do this. Not for them, for me. I hung up and got dressed. As I drove through the empty Seattle streets, I realized something. Cutting toxic people out of your life was supposed to feel like freedom. So why did it feel like I'd amputated part of myself? And why couldn't I stop bleeding? Saturday, October 19th, 3:47 a.m. Harborview Medical Center smelled like antiseptic and fear. I walked through the automatic doors into the fluorescent-lit emergency room, my hands shoved deep in my coat pockets. I hadn't been in a hospital since Daniel's hip surgery 3 years ago, the one I'd paid for while they vacationed in Cabo. The ICU was on the 4th floor. The elevator ride felt like descending into cold water. When the doors opened, I saw them immediately. Daniel sat in a plastic chair, his head in his hands. He'd aged a decade in 4 days. His suit jacket was gone. His shirt was untucked. He looked like a man who'd been hit by a truck and was still trying to figure out which direction it had come from. Amber stood by the window, arms wrapped around herself. She wore sweatpants and a hoodie, no makeup, hair in a messy bun. She looked younger, smaller, real. They both looked up when they heard my footsteps. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Amber took a step forward. You came. How is she? Stable. For now. Amber's voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying for hours. They induced a cardiac event, stress-related. The doctor said. She swallowed hard. They said if it happens again, she might not make it. Daniel stood up slowly. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He looked at me with something I'd never seen in his eyes before. Helplessness. Can I see her? I asked. She's been asking for you, Amber said. Room 447. But Rebecca? She hesitated. She's really fragile right now. I walked past them without another word. Room 447 was at the end of a long corridor. Through the window in the door, I could see Patricia lying in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors that beeped with mechanical indifference. She looked small, breakable. I knocked softly and pushed the door open. Patricia's eyes flickered open. When she saw me, something in her face crumpled. Rebecca. Her voice was barely a whisper. I walked to the bedside and stood there, hands in my pockets, maintaining distance. I heard you wanted to see me. I didn't think you'd come. I almost didn't. She closed her eyes and a tear slid down her temple into her hair. I'm so sorry. For what specifically? The question came out harder than I intended, but I was too tired to soften it. For all of it. She opened her eyes and looked at me. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in my life. For 32 years of making you invisible. I pulled a chair over and sat down, but I didn't move closer. Why did you? Patricia took a shaky breath. When you were 8 years old, your teacher called us in for a conference. Do you remember? I shook my head. Mrs. Henderson, she said you'd tested off the charts, that you were gifted. She wanted to move you to an advanced program, a special school for exceptional students. Full scholarship, the best education in the state. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I don't remember any of this. Because we never told you. Patricia's voice broke. We turned it down. The room seemed to tilt slightly. We told Mrs. Henderson you were too young to be separated from your peers, that we wanted you to have a normal childhood, but that wasn't the real reason. What was the real reason? Patricia looked at the ceiling, tears streaming freely now. I was jealous. The word hung in the air like a grenade. I was jealous of my own 8-year-old daughter, she continued. You were brilliant, special. You had something I never had. Substance, intelligence, purpose. And I couldn't stand it. She turned her head to look at me, and the rawness in her eyes was almost unbearable. I was second runner-up in Miss Washington 1986. Did you know that? Second runner-up. Not even first runner-up. I lost to a girl who wasn't as pretty as me, but she was smart. She answered the interview questions with confidence and depth, and I gave pageant answers. Hollow, practiced answers. Mom, I spent my whole life being told I was beautiful. That beauty was enough. And then I realized it wasn't. It was never enough. I had nothing else. No skills, no education, no identity beyond my appearance. She was sobbing now, her heart monitor beeping faster. And when I looked at you, this brilliant, capable child, I saw everything I wasn't. You reminded me of my failure. So you dimmed me. Yes. The word was barely audible. I convinced myself I was protecting you, that smart girls get bullied, that you'd be happier if you were more like Amber, pretty and popular and uncomplicated. But you weren't protecting me. You were protecting yourself. I know. Patricia reached for my hand, but I didn't take it. And then Amber came along, and she was beautiful, and I thought I could give her what I never got. I could make her the success I never was. I could live through her. You destroyed her too, I said quietly. You taught her that appearance was everything, that she didn't need substance because she had beauty. And now she's 28 with no education, no skills, and no future because you made her believe a pretty face was enough. Patricia sobbed harder. I ruined both my daughters, one by neglect, one by obsession, and I didn't see it until it was too late. I sat there listening to the monitors beep, feeling something shift inside me. All these years, I'd thought they didn't love me, that I wasn't good enough for their love, but that wasn't it. They'd loved me so little because they'd loved themselves even less. There's something else, Patricia whispered. Something you need to know. What? 3 months ago, we remortgaged the house. The one you paid off. We borrowed $200,000. My hands clenched in my lap. For what? For Amber's career. We paid for professional photography, videography, social media coaching, PR consultants. We bought her a new wardrobe. We invested everything. She closed her eyes. The month we did it, you sent us a check for $10,000 for Christmas. You wrote in the memo line, for emergencies. I remembered. They'd never thanked me for it. We used it to buy Amber new ring lights. The absurdity of it, the tragic, crushing absurdity, made me want to laugh or scream or both. We gambled everything on her becoming famous, Patricia continued, because if she made it, we'd be secure. We'd be important. We'd be... She trailed off. We'd be somebody. And you thought I was the safe bet, the boring one, the one who'd always be there to bail you out. Yes, at least she was being honest now. The bank is foreclosing, she whispered. We have 30 days. We'll lose the house. We'll lose everything. I should have felt satisfaction. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I just felt tired. I didn't come here for this, I said, standing up. I didn't come here for your confession or your apology or your financial crisis. Then why did you come? I looked at this woman, this stranger who'd given birth to me, raised me, and never known me, and felt something unexpected. Pity. Because despite everything, you're still my mother, and I needed to know if I was capable of compassion even when it wasn't deserved. Are you? I thought about it. I don't know yet. I walked to the door. Rebecca? I stopped, but didn't turn around. That teacher, Mrs. Henderson, she said something else. She said you were special, that you'd change the world someday, that all you needed was someone to believe in you. Patricia's voice cracked. I should have been that person. I'm so sorry I wasn't. I left without responding. 4:30 a.m. The hallway. Amber was waiting outside the room. Daniel had disappeared, probably to the cafeteria or the parking lot or anywhere else he could avoid facing reality. How is she? Amber asked. Honest. Finally. Amber nodded slowly. She told you about the mortgage. You knew? I found out last week after... She gestured vaguely. After everything exploded, I was going through their mail. They've been too depressed to deal with it, and I saw the foreclosure notice. We stood there in the fluorescent hallway, two sisters who'd been strangers their entire lives. I'm going to community college, Amber said suddenly. I blinked. What? I enrolled 3 days ago. Graphic design. It's what I wanted to study before. She swallowed. Before Mom convinced me I could be an influencer instead, that I was too pretty to waste time on boring classes. Amber, I'm not asking for money, she said quickly. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know. I'm trying to become someone real. I studied her face, the raw honesty there, the exhaustion. Why? I asked. Because I watched you on that stage, Amber said, her voice thick. I watched you standing next to the president wearing that incredible dress, looking like you owned the world, and I realized... She started crying. Not the performative tears I'd seen at the restaurant, but genuine gut-wrenching sobs. I realized I've spent 28 years pretending to be special instead of actually becoming someone. I've wasted my entire adult life chasing validation from strangers online, and you were out there saving lives. Amber, I'm a joke, Rebecca. I'm a meme. The sister who chose lipstick over the president. That's my legacy. That's all I'll ever be remembered for. She wiped her face with her sleeve. But maybe it's not too late. Maybe I can still become someone worth remembering for the right reasons. I felt something crack in my chest. It's not too late. She looked up, surprised. You're 28, I continued. I didn't start at the NIB until I was 26. You have time, if you actually want to change. I do, God, I do. I'm so tired of being empty. She took a shaky breath. I know I don't deserve your help. I know you owe me nothing. But if you could, if there was any way. What do you need? There's a design position at the NIB, entry level, $45,000 a year. I saw the posting online. It's probably already filled, but I thought, it's not filled. It's not? I pulled out my phone and texted Kevin. That junior designer position in the public outreach department, still open? He responded immediately. Yeah. Why? I have a candidate. She's talented but inexperienced, would need mentoring. You're kidding. I'm not. She deserves a chance to prove she's more than her mistakes. 3 dots. Then, send me her resume. I'll pass it to HR. I looked at Amber. Send your portfolio and resume to this email address. No guarantees. You'll interview like everyone else. If you get the job, it'll be because you earned it, not because you're my sister. Her hands were shaking as she took my phone to copy down the email. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet. This isn't a favor. This is a chance. What you do with it is up to you. I won't waste it. Good. I started toward the elevator, then stopped. Amber? Yeah? What happened to us wasn't entirely your fault. We were both victims of the same people. You were just collateral damage in a different way. She nodded, tears streaming down her face again. But that doesn't absolve you of your choices, I continued. You were cruel to me. You participated in my erasure. Own that. I do. I will. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough, but it's a start. I walked to the elevator and pressed the button. Behind me, Amber said quietly, For what it's worth, you were always the one I wanted to be like. I just didn't know how. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors closed, I saw Amber standing in the hallway, looking lost and small and for the first time, genuinely remorseful. Maybe there was hope for her after all. Saturday, 2 p.m. I met with my attorney at a cafe downtown. Miranda Chin was a shark in a designer suit, exactly the kind of lawyer you wanted when things got ugly. "The extortion case is airtight," she said, sliding a folder across the table. "We have the recording. We have witnesses to the trespass. We could pursue criminal charges that would put your father in federal prison for up to 5 years. Or we don't. We get the restraining order, that's already filed and approved, and we walk away." I opened the folder. The legal documents were dense, intimidating. My father's name appeared on every page like an indictment. 5 years in federal prison. For a 60-year-old man with no prior record, that would be devastating. He'd come out broken, unemployable, destroyed. Part of me, the part that remembered 32 years of being invisible, wanted that. But a larger part remembered what Harrison had said. Don't let work consume everything. Don't close yourself off entirely. The strongest structures have some flexibility. "What do you recommend?" I asked. Miranda studied me. "Personally, I'd prosecute. They threatened you. They tried to extort you. They deserve consequences." But you're not asking as my client. You're asking as a person." She leaned back. "As a person, I'd say revenge feels good in the moment, but it's corrosive long term. It eats away at you. The strongest position is the one where you don't need them to suffer for you to be okay." I thought about Patricia in the hospital bed, about Amber enrolling in community college, about Daniel sitting in that plastic chair, looking like a man who'd already lost everything. "I have a proposal," I said, "a different kind of consequence." "I'm listening." "I'll pay their mortgage, one lump sum to clear the debt and prevent foreclosure." Miranda's eyebrows shot up. "You're kidding." "I'm not, but there are conditions." I pulled out my own folder. I'd prepared this last night, unable to sleep. "They sign a contract, a legally binding agreement." "What kind of agreement?" "They never contact me again unless I initiate contact. No calls, no texts, no showing up at my work. If they violate the restraining order, the full amount of the payment becomes a loan due immediately, with interest." That's actually clever. There's more. They agree to mandatory family therapy. Patricia and Daniel together, all 3 of them together. Proof of attendance for 1 year, or the payment becomes a loan. You're making them work for it. I'm giving them a chance to become better people. Whether they take it is up to them. I paused. And I'm protecting myself. If they can't follow basic boundaries and do basic emotional work, they don't deserve my mercy. Miranda smiled. "This is good. This is really good. It gives you all the power while looking magnanimous. The press will love it." "I don't care about the press." "Rebecca, you're a public figure now. Everything you do matters. If you prosecute your family while they're struggling, you look vindictive. If you help them with strings attached, you look like the bigger person who still maintains boundaries. That's a narrative people can get behind." I hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. "There's one more thing," I said. "Amber gets nothing from the mortgage payment. She's an adult. If she wants to change her life, she does it herself. No bailouts, no safety net beyond a fair chance at employment. You're really making her earn it. That's the only way she'll value it." Miranda gathered the papers. "I'll draft the contract. They'll sign it. They have no choice. It's this or foreclosure and possible prison time." "Good." "Rebecca?" Miranda looked at me with something like respect. "You're not letting them off easy. You're giving them the hardest thing possible, the opportunity to grow up. Most people would rather go to prison than face their own dysfunction." "Then they'll go to prison." "Cold." "Structural," I corrected. "Everything has a load-bearing capacity. I'm just testing theirs." 2 weeks later. October 31st, the contract was signed. Daniel and Patricia sat across from Miranda in her conference room, signing page after page of legal documents that laid out exactly how conditional my mercy was. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. I was in my office at the NIB, monitoring a potential stress fracture in a bridge in Spokane, but Miranda sent me a photo. Both of them, pens in hand, looking small and defeated and grateful. The mortgage was paid, the house was saved, and I would never have to see them again unless I chose to. Amber got the job at the NIB. Kevin had interviewed her personally and called me afterward. "She's raw," he said. "Really raw. But she has an eye for design. And more importantly, she was honest. She told me everything. The influencer thing, the family drama, her lack of experience. She didn't try to spin it or make excuses. Just owned it. That's growth." "Yeah." He paused. "You okay with this? Having her in the building? We'll be in different departments. Different floors. And Kevin? Yeah? If she messes up, fire her. Don't keep her because she's my sister. She needs to learn that merit matters." Understood. 6 months later, April 15th, spring in Seattle was always a gamble. You never knew if you'd get rain or sunshine. Today, miraculously, we got sunshine. I stood on the observation deck of the Marcus Whitman Bridge, the same bridge whose sensor anomaly I'd caught 6 months ago, supervising the final inspection of the reinforced cable anchors. The wind whipped my hair around my face. Below, Puget Sound sparkled in the afternoon light. 50,000 cars crossed this bridge every day, and none of them knew how close they'd come to disaster. That was fine. That was the job. "Ms. Walsh?" A young woman in a hard hat approached. Maya Rodriguez, a junior engineer I'd been mentoring. "The stress tests are all green. The repairs are holding perfectly." "Good work, Rodriguez. Document everything and send the report to Director Blake." "Yes, ma'am." She paused. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "How did you know? 6 months ago? The deviation was so small. Most engineers would have flagged it for the next scheduled inspection. But you deployed a crew immediately." I looked out at the water. "Because small things become big things. A 0.004% deviation becomes a 4% deviation, becomes a catastrophic failure. You have to see the future, not just the present." "How do you learn to do that?" "Practice, paranoia, and really good coffee." I smiled. "You're doing fine, Rodriguez. Keep asking questions." She headed back to the equipment van, and I stood there alone with the wind and the bridge and the city I protected. My phone buzzed. A text from Kevin. "Dinner tonight? There's a new Italian place I want to try." Over the past 6 months, Kevin and I had been something. Not quite dating. Not quite just friends. We had dinner once a week. He brought me coffee every morning. We talked about everything except what we were doing. It was terrifying and wonderful. I'd spent so long being alone that letting someone in felt like learning a new language. But I was trying. I texted back, "Only if they have that wine you like. Already made a reservation." 7 p.m.? Perfect. Another text came through. This one from Amber. "Hey, I just finished my first solo project, a safety poster series for schools. Want to see? No pressure if you're busy." I opened the attachment. The posters were actually good. Clean design, clear messaging, age-appropriate graphics. "Professional. These are great," I typed back. "Really great. Nice work. Thanks. That means a lot coming from you." We weren't close. We probably never would be. But we were civil. Respectful. She'd taken the job and actually worked hard at it. No special treatment, no drama. She came in early, stayed late, took criticism professionally. She was becoming someone real. Once a month, Amber and I had coffee in the NIB cafeteria. Brief, surface-level conversations. But it was something. Patricia sent me a card every week. I didn't respond to them, but I read them. They were increasingly honest. Raw admissions of guilt, descriptions of therapy sessions, small updates about their lives. I wasn't ready to forgive. Maybe I never would be. But I was learning that you could have compassion for people without letting them back into your life. You could acknowledge their humanity without forgetting what they'd done. You could build a bridge without crossing it. That evening, 7 p.m. Kevin picked me up at my penthouse. He'd started coming up to my apartment a month ago. Before that, we'd always met in neutral locations. Letting him into my space had felt like removing armor, but tonight, when he knocked and I opened the door, it felt natural. "You look beautiful," he said. I was wearing jeans and a sweater, no makeup, hair in a ponytail. "I look like I've been standing on a bridge all day." "Yeah, beautiful." He said it with such simple sincerity that I felt my face flush. We drove to the restaurant in his car, a beat-up Subaru with car seats in the back for his daughters. He talked about his day, about a funny thing his 8-year-old had said, about a problem he was working on with reservoir management. It was normal, comfortable, real. The restaurant was small and dimly lit, the kind of place that didn't need to impress anyone because the food spoke for itself. Over pasta and wine, Kevin said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are we dating, or are we just two colleagues who happen to have dinner once a week and text constantly and think about each other more than is strictly professional?" I laughed, a real laugh that surprised me. "Is there a difference?" "I think so. One has a future. One is just suspended animation." I set down my fork. My heart was pounding, but not unpleasantly. "I'm bad at this, Kevin, at relationships, at letting people in. I've spent so long building walls." "I know. I see the walls. I'm not asking you to tear them down overnight. I'm just asking if maybe you'd consider putting in a door." I looked at this kind, patient man who brought me coffee every morning and never asked for anything in return, who'd flown to D.C. just to sit next to me at dinner, who'd vetted Amber's job application with fairness and professionalism, even though he could have rejected her out of loyalty to me. "Yeah," I said softly. "I think I can do that." "Yeah?" "Yeah." I reached across the table and took his hand, something I'd never done before. "I'm dating you, officially, if that's what you want." His smile was like sunrise. "That's what I want." We finished dinner talking about stupid things, favorite movies, worst vacations, childhood embarrassments, the kinds of things people talk about when they're building something together. When he dropped me off at my building, he walked me to the elevator. "Can I kiss you?" he asked. "You're asking permission?" "I'm a federal employee dating a senior analyst. I believe in explicit consent." I laughed and kissed him first. It was gentle and brief and perfect. When I pulled back, he was grinning. "So, that's a yes?" "That's a yes." I rode the elevator to my penthouse feeling lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Inside my apartment, I poured a glass of water and stood by the window, looking out at the city. My phone buzzed. A text from Harrison. "Board meeting next month. They're considering you for deputy director, youngest in bureau history. Interested?" I stared at the message. 6 months ago, I would have said yes immediately. Work was everything. Achievement was identity. But now I had coffee dates with Amber where we talked about graphic design theory. Now I had Kevin who made me laugh and see that life existed outside of structural analysis. Now I had boundaries with my parents that actually held. I was learning that being strong didn't mean being alone, that the most stable structures weren't rigid, they had flexibility, room to move, room to grow. I texted back, "Let me think about it. I want to make sure I'm saying yes for the right reasons." Harrison's response, "That's exactly why you're the right person for the job. Take your time." I set the phone down and looked at my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me was different from the one who'd driven to her parents' house 6 months ago, desperate for their approval. This woman knew her worth. This woman had cut out the toxicity but kept the door open for genuine change. This woman had learned that you could be powerful and vulnerable at the same time. I raised my water glass to my reflection in a silent toast, to the architect of safety, to the woman who saved cities, to Rebecca Walsh, who'd finally learned to save herself. October 14th, 1-year anniversary. I stood backstage at Constitution Hall, the same venue where I'd received the Silver Star exactly 1 year ago. But today, I wasn't receiving an award. I was giving a speech. The National Engineering Foundation had invited me to keynote their annual conference. The theme was Building Resilience, Infrastructure, and Identity. Through a gap in the curtain, I could see the audience filing in. 2,000 engineers, students, policymakers. And in the front row, Kevin, holding hands with his daughters, Jen Mitchell with her son, Harrison Blake, now retired but still my mentor. And 3 rows back, Amber. She'd driven down from Seattle for this. We weren't close, probably never would be, but we had coffee twice a month now. Real conversations, honest ones. She'd been working at the NIB for a year. She'd gotten 2 promotions based on merit. She'd paid off her credit cards. She was seeing a therapist. She was building a real life. Patricia and Daniel hadn't come. They'd sent a card, a genuine one, handwritten by Patricia. It said, "We're proud of you. We're sorry we took so long to say it. We're working on becoming people who deserve to say it. Love, Mom and Dad." I'd cried when I read it. Not tears of reconciliation. I still wasn't ready for that. But tears of acknowledgement. They were trying. That was something. The stage manager appeared at my elbow. 5 minutes, Ms. Walsh. Sir, I nodded and reviewed my notes one last time. The speech was about structural integrity, but not just in bridges. In people, in families, in the foundations we build our lives on. It was about knowing when to reinforce and when to demolish, when to be steel and when to be flexible, when to be alone and when to let people in. 2 minutes. I put my notes away. I didn't need them. I knew what I wanted to say. The lights dimmed, the audience quieted. The MC walked onto the stage. Please welcome Rebecca Walsh, Deputy Director of the National Infrastructure Bureau and recipient of the Silver Star for Public Safety. I walked into the spotlight. The applause was thunderous. I looked out at the crowd, at all these people who'd come to hear me speak, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not for the recognition, for the journey. I gripped the podium and began. A year ago, I stood on a different stage and talked about the work I do. Tonight, I want to talk about the work I've done on myself. Because here's what they don't tell you about being strong. Strength without flexibility is brittleness, and brittle things break. I spent 32 years building walls so high that nothing could hurt me, but walls don't just keep pain out, they keep everything out. Joy, connection, love. The strongest bridges aren't solid blocks of concrete. They're structures that can move, that can absorb stress, that can flex without breaking. I've learned, am still learning, to be that kind of structure. I looked at Kevin in the front row. He was smiling. I've learned that you can cut toxic people out of your life and still have compassion for them, that you can set boundaries and still leave the door open for genuine change. I looked at Amber. She was crying quietly. I've learned that family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who show up, who bring you coffee, who fly across the country just to sit next to you, who believe in you when you don't believe in yourself. I looked at Harrison. I've learned that the strongest position isn't the one where you need nothing from anyone. It's the one where you're strong enough to admit what you need, brave enough to ask for it, wise enough to build a life that can hold both independence and connection. I paused and looked out at the entire audience. A year ago, I thought victory meant standing alone at the top. I thought strength meant needing no one. I was wrong. Real strength is building something that can weather any storm, not because it's rigid, but because it knows how to bend. Real victory isn't revenge. It's becoming someone you're proud to be, regardless of who's watching. And real family, real love, is found in the people who see you at your worst and still choose to stand beside you at your best. The applause started before I finished. By the time I stepped back from the podium, the entire audience was on their feet, but I wasn't looking at them. I was looking at Kevin, who was wiping his eyes, at Jen, who was beaming with pride, at Amber, who mouthed, "Thank you." Later, after the conference ended, Kevin and I walked along the National Mall. His daughters had gone with Jen to get ice cream, giving us time alone. "That was incredible," he said. "You made 2,000 engineers cry." I made myself cry. It's true, though. All of it. He stopped walking and turned to face me. "You're the strongest person I know, Rebecca. Not because you don't need anyone. Because you do need people and you're not afraid to admit it anymore." I took his hand. "I'm still learning. It's still hard." "I know, but you're doing it anyway. That's what courage looks like." We walked in silence for a while, past the Washington Monument glowing in the evening light. "Kevin?" Yeah? I love you. It was the first time I'd said it. The first time I'd let myself be that vulnerable. He stopped walking and pulled me into a hug. I love you too. We stood there on the mall, two people who'd built something real and sturdy and flexible enough to last. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about bridges or stress tests or load-bearing capacities. I was just present, just human, just happy. Final scene. Bridge inspection. 6 months later, I stood on the Marcus Whitman Bridge at dawn, watching the sun rise over Puget Sound. The bridge was strong. The repairs I'd ordered 18 months ago had held. The structure was sound. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Maya Rodriguez, my protege, approached with a tablet. Morning, boss. Ready for the quarterly assessment? Ready. We worked in comfortable silence, checking sensor readings, documenting stress levels, ensuring that this structure, this vital connection between two shores, would continue to hold. When we finished, Maya asked, Ms. Walsh, can I ask you something personal? Depends on how personal. That speech you gave last year about building structures that can flex, did you really believe that? Or were you just saying what people wanted to hear? I thought about it carefully. I thought about Patricia in the hospital, finally being honest, about Amber, building a real career, about Kevin making me laugh, about the life I'd built, not perfect, but genuine. I believed it, I said. I believe it more now than I did then. How do you know when to flex and when to stay rigid? Experience, intuition, and accepting that sometimes you'll make the wrong call. I looked at her. The goal isn't perfection, Rodriguez. The goal is resilience, the ability to take a hit and still stand. She nodded slowly. I think I understand. You will. Give it time. We packed up our equipment and headed back to the van. As we drove away, I looked back at the bridge one last time. It stood strong in the morning light, not because it was rigid, but because it was designed to move. Like me. Like all of us. We weren't meant to be unbreakable. We were meant to be resilient. And there was a difference, a beautiful, essential difference.